Midterm review, properties of water, plants, and microscopes. What is the structure of water? Polarity of water molecules results in hydrogen bonding. The water molecule is relatively simple in structure. Two hydrogen atoms are joined to a single oxygen atom. Oxygen is more electronegative than the hydrogen atoms, which allow electrons of the polar bonds to spend more time closer to the oxygen side of the molecule. The oxygen side becomes more negative in charge, and the hydrogen atoms have a slight positive charge. This forms a polar molecule. Polar molecules act like magnets. An attraction occurs between the polar water molecules. A slight positive charge hydrogen atom is attracted to the slight negative charged oxygen atom of another water molecule. This weak attraction is called a hydrogen bond. Every water molecule is hydrogen bonded to its nearest neighbors. Hydrogen bonds are special bonds because they are what give water its unique properties that allow life to thrive on planet Earth. What's the structure of water? Well, polarity of water molecules results in hydrogen bonding. What do polar molecules act like? Magnets. What's a hydrogen bond? It's the slightly positive hydrogen is then attracted to the slightly negative oxygen in another water molecule. It's between the water molecules. Do hydrogen bonds occur in one individual water molecule or between neighboring molecules? Neighboring. What type of bond is responsible for giving water its unique properties? Hydrogen. So what are the properties of water? Cohesion. At any given time, larger percentage of water molecules are bonded to neighboring water molecules, which give water more structure than most other liquids. Collectively, the hydrogen bonds hold water together by the property of cohesion. Surface tension, measure of how difficult it is to stretch or break the surface of a liquid. Water has a greater surface tension than all other liquids. The result is an interface surface or film under tension. Water's high surface tension serves as a supporting surface for many organisms. Many aquatic organisms have evolved adaptations that allow them to spread their body weight over a large surface area to prevent breaking water's surface tension. Adhesion. When water molecules bond to other surfaces, such as water climbing up a paper towel or water sticking to the xylem inside the veins of trees. High specific heat. Water has a high heat capacity. Specific heat is a measure of heat capacity. Is the heat required to raise the temperature of 1 gram of water 1 degree Celsius. Water with its high heat capacity therefore changes temperature more slowly than other compounds. The heat capacity of water stems directly from its hydrogen bonded structure. Although hydrogen bonds are weak, their combined effect is enormous. As heat is added to ice or liquid water, the energy first breaks hydrogen bonds, which allows the molecules to move freely. Since temperature is a measure of the average kinetic energy of molecules, or rate to which they move, the temperature of water rises slowly with the addition of heat. When the temperature of water drops slightly, many additional hydrogen bonds form and release a considerable amount of energy in the form of heat. This resistance to sudden changes in temperature makes water an excellent habitat because organisms adapted to narrow temperature ranges may die if the temperature fluctuates widely. The heat requiring and heat retaining properties of water provide a much more stable environment than is found in terrestrial land situations. Fluctuations in water temperature occur very gradually. Water can moderate temperatures at night, and during winter, the gradually cooling water can warm the air. Frozen water density. Water is one of the few substances that are less dense as a solid than as a liquid. While most substances contract when they solidify, water expands. This property is due to the hydrogen bonding. Water starts to freeze when the temperature approaches 0 degrees Celsius and the molecules no longer move vigorously enough to break their hydrogen bonds. As the water reaches 0 degrees Celsius, the water molecules become locked into a crystalline lattice, and each water molecule is bonded to the maximum of 4 partners. Water is a universal solvent. Water is a substance that can almost dissolve anything. Salts such as sodium chloride dissolve in water by dissociating it as each ion becomes surrounded by polar water molecules. Shielded by the shell of water molecules, the ions stay in solution because they're no longer affected by attractive forces from other ions. What property is it called when one molecule sticks to other water molecules? Cohesion. What property of water is it called when a film forms on the surface of the water? Surface tension. What property of water is when water sticks to other substances such as the xylem? Adhesion. What property of water is when insects can walk on the surface of the water? Surface tension. Does water have a high heat capacity of low heat capacity? High heat capacity. Does water change temperature quickly or slowly? Very slowly. Does heat capacity stems from hydrogen bonds? Why is water an excellent habitat for organisms? Resistance to sudden changes in temperature provide a stable habitat. Which is the more stable, the temperature on land or the temperature in water? It's in water. On land, it heats and cools too quickly. How can water moderate temperatures? At night and during winter, the Gradually cooling water can warm the air. Water is one of the few substances that is less dense as a solid. What bond is responsible for water being less dense as a solid? Hydrogen bonds. What happens to the water molecules when the temperature approaches 0 degrees Celsius? The water molecules become locked into a crystalline lattice and is bonded with four partners. What can water dissolve? Almost anything. How do the substances dissolve? What are they surrounded by? Each molecule becomes surrounded by the polar water molecule. Polar water molecules. What are the plant organs? Plants have organs just like humans do. These organs are made out of a group of tissues working together. The three plant organs you will most likely see on the midterm are roots, stems, and leaves. Roots absorb water, dissolves nutrients, and anchor the plant to the ground. Roots have specialized parts that develop from its three tissues, ground, dermal, and vascular. Roots also have root hairs, which help to increase the surface area and thus the amount of water that can diffuse into the root. Stems position leaves so they receive maximum sunlight. They support the plant and also help support water and nutrients between the roots and leaves. Stems also are made out of the three tissues, ground, dermal, and vascular. The leaves have an important function because they are where the most photosynthesis occurs. Leaves are also important in regulating gas exchange. Leaves have three tissues, ground, dermal, and vascular. What are the organs made out of? Tissues working together. What is the function of roots? Absorbs water, dissolves nutrients, anchors the plant. What's the function of roots hairs? To increase surface area and amount of water that can diffuse. What's the function of stems? They position the leaves to get maximum sun and they support the plant. What's the function of leaves? Photosynthesis. What three tissues can be found in roots, stems, and leaves? Dermal, ground, and vascular. What are plant tissues? Plant tissues are made of groups of cells working together. There are three plant tissues, dermal, ground, and vascular. Dermal tissue is like the skin of the plant. It protects the plant and is found in the outer layer. It also prevents water loss. The guard cells can be found in the lower epidermal layer of the leaf. There, the guard cells open and close the stomata so as they exchange gases with the air. Guard cells are important because they help regulate gas exchange and maintain homeostasis in the plant. When the plant has too much water, the guard cells open and let the water out. When there is a drought, the plant closes the guard cells, allowing it to maintain the level of water in the plant. Ground tissue is where the most photosynthesis occurs. The cells in the ground tissue contain a lot of chloroplasts to maximize the amount of photosynthesis being completed. Vascular tissue is the vein of the plant. It is made of two parts, the xylem and phloem. The xylem transports water up the plant against the force of gravity. Phloem transports sugar down the plant from the leaves down to the root. What are tissues made out of? Cells working together. Dermal tissue is like the skin of the plant. What's the function of the dermal layer? Protects and prevents water loss. In what tissue are guard cells located? The dermal. What do guard cells open and close? The stomata. Why are guard cells important? They regulate gas exchange and maintain homeostasis. In what tissue does photosynthesis occur? Ground. Vascular tissue is like the vein of the plant. The xylem transports water. The phloem transports food and glucose. What is transpiration and capillary action? Capillary action is when water rises upward against the force of gravity. This phenomenon occurs because of cohesion and adhesion. The attractive forces between the water and the xylem is stronger than the cohesion. As a result, the water molecules climb the surface of the interior of the xylem, just like when we saw water climb upwards on a paper towel. Transpiration is a process by which moisture is carried through plants from roots to small porous stomata on the underside of leaves, where it changes to vapor and is released into the atmosphere. Transpiration is essentially evaporation of water from plant leaves. Transpiration continues to pull on the water that has risen due to capillary action. It pulls the water all the way up through the stem and out through the leaf. What's transpiration? Process where water evaporates from plant leaves. What's capillary action? Water rises upward against the force of gravity. What two properties of water work together in capillary action? Cohesion and adhesion. What are different kinds of microscopes? There's a compound microscope. It's a microscope that has one eyepiece, and it is the microscope that we use in class. It can be used on living and dead organisms. However, the microscope inverts and reverses the image upside down and backwards. There are multiple objectives, magnifications that can be used. Example, we start using scanning 4x then we move to the low power 10x and finally to the high power 40x. We can view small, thin samples. The light source is below the specimen. Stereo microscope or dissecting microscope. This microscope has two eyepieces. It only contains a single objective, which is low power. The light source is above the specimen. It's a good tool to use to dissect organisms because it doesn't invert the image. Electron microscopes. These microscopes are the strongest microscopes and are able to magnify an image over 1 million times. They are so strong that they can take a picture of the atom. Electron microscopes are very expensive and can usually only be found in universities or expensive labs. Electron microscopes work by using electrons to produce an image of the specimen. Specimens must be dead in order for the electron microscope to work properly. You got a scanning electron microscope, gives a 3D image. Its electrons scan the surface of the specimen, revealing details about the outside of an organism. Transmission electron microscope gives a 2D image. This type reveals relationships of internal structures of an organism. Think transmission, like it transmits and goes through the organism, revealing its insides. Which type of microscope did we use in class? A compound. What does the compound microscope do to the image? It reverses and inverts it. How many eyepieces does the compound microscope have? 2. How many eyepieces does the stereo microscope have? 1. This microscope has many different objectives, such as scanning, low, and high power. This microscope would be compound. This microscope has only one objective, low power. This microscope would be stereo microscope, compound or stereo microscope. What is it? It is a stereo microscope. This is the answer to number 6. What's another name for a stereo microscope? Dissecting. What's the most expensive microscope that magnifies the most? Electron microscope. Which type of microscope gives a 3D image? Scanning. Which type of electron microscope gives you an image of the surface of the object? Scanning. Which type of electron microscope gives you an image of the internal structures? Transmission. So what we can see is without a microscope, that's the letter F, obviously, but upside down and backwards would be that image under a compound microscope.